It was the early morning of July 15th, 2004. Before the break of dawn, in the vibrant heart of downtown Seoul, a man's voice echoed as he discreetly dialed the number of an escort agency, craving companionship for the rest of his night. Swiftly, arrangements were made and the stage was set. The escort agency arranged for a taxi to navigate the hushed city streets, transporting a woman to a discreet meeting point. A public park, nestled close to a university, a rendezvous point chosen by the man at the other end of the line. Where are you headed, miss? Just the park, next to Hongik University. Thank you. While prostitution is prohibited in South Korea, the Korean Women's Development Institute reveals that the sex trade in the country had approximately amounted to $13 billion in 2007, constituting about 1.6% of the nation's GDP. It's no secret that sex sells, and where there's money to be made, the shadowy realms of the sex work industry flourishes. The unsuspecting woman, guided by the glow of the city lights, opened the door and stepped towards the designated meeting spot. She wouldn't know that the shadows concealing the trees harbored secrets darker than the night itself. Her customer for the evening was Yoo Young-chul. He was 34 and was a frequent patron of several massage parlors and escort services. But recently, a disconcerting pattern caught the attention of numerous massage parlor owners. Their employees were inexplicably disappearing once their services concluded. This created an atmosphere of terror for escorts during that period, as the fate of the girls remained an enigma. They had mysteriously vanished after meeting their clients. Upon reaching the park, the woman spotted Yoo and prepared to accompany him back to his apartment. They walked together towards the Sinchon Grand Mart. However, Yoo stopped in his tracks and promptly contacted the escort agency, expressing his disinterest in the woman they had sent due to her height. He reached out to the agency, requesting a change to a different woman. After a series of negotiations, he eventually showed interest in the third woman they had dispatched. With newfound enthusiasm, Yoo coordinated a meeting, selecting the discreet alley behind the Grand Mart as the backdrop for their encounter. After a brief passage of time, Yoo Young-chul found himself pacing aimlessly along the alley, yet there was still no sign of the girl's arrival. Unbeknownst to him, the alley had been surrounded by not only the escort agency's personnel, but also the police. Inspector Young, leading the charge from the Mobile Investigation Unit, was the first to confront Yoo, bravely handcuffing him, even in the face of his fierce resistance. As Yoo was escorted into the police vehicle, his behavior was extremely bizarre. He began to vigorously chew on something, defying attempts to restrain him and stubbornly resisting any attempts to pry his mouth open. His saliva dripped erratically, tracing chaotic patterns down his face and onto his disheveled clothes. Upon his return to the station, the majority of officers perceived him as merely another unruly client from a massage parlor. They wouldn't know that the man now handcuffed before them was none other than one of South Korea's most infamous serial killers. And he was about to escape. You're listening to Heinous, an Asian true crime podcast, brought to you by MediaCorp and produced by One Up Media. This episode may contain sensitive details and graphic imagery. Listener discretion is advised. In the tumultuous year of 1970, Yoo Young-chul was born in Gochang County, South Korea. The 1970s in South Korea unfolded against a backdrop of pervasive poverty, characterized by the simplicity and hardships of everyday life for many Korean citizens. During this era, one's economic standing significantly dictated the quality of life, a reality that was sharply accentuated by the existing divide between the rural and urban landscapes. In the midst of a struggling economy, Those residing in the cities enjoyed relatively comfortable lives, while the rural areas grappled with the challenges of their economic circumstances. For Yoo Young-chul, his life was about to get more challenging, as his parents had separated shortly after his birth. Yoo spent his early years under the care of his grandmother alongside his siblings. A transition occurred when they relocated to the Mapo district of Seoul to live with their father. Raised in the blue-collar milieu of his working-class parents, Yoo experienced the weight of financial struggles that often accompanied them. This economic hardship, coupled with the ensuing bullying he faced in school due to his family's financial situation, sowed seeds of resentment within him toward the rich. But it was also during these formative years in school that Yoo discovered a passion for the arts. He loved playing the guitar, singing, painting, and delving into poetry, and it was this profound connection to the arts that prompted him to apply to a specialized high school, only to be met with rejection. Undeterred, he redirected his path and enrolled in a technical school. However, during his high school years, he led a life entangled with criminal activities, culminating in spells of juvenile detention for acts of shoplifting. At this juncture, Yoo's fervor for the arts remained significant, but financial constraints hindered his ability to indulge in it. Consequently, in 1988, at the tender age of 18, Yoo found himself in jail for stealing a neighbor's guitar. What followed were a series of petty thefts, and unfortunately, it hinted at an eventual descent into a more severe and violent transgression. As he entered adulthood, his habit of stealing stuck with him, but the items he stole were getting higher in value. From cash to cameras and then to cars, Yoo had found himself going in and out of jail frequently during the 90s. In 1991, Yoo found himself entangled in theft once more, resulting in a 10-month prison sentence. Upon his release, Yoo actually got married, but getting married didn't help his situation. In fact, it arguably made it worse. His son was born in October of 1994, and now he had a compelling urgency to support his growing young family. In 1993, Yoo faced another arrest, this time for theft, leading to an 8-month prison sentence. 2 years later, in 1995, he was sent to jail again for selling child pornography. Further run-ins with the law ensued in 1998, when Yoo received a 2-year prison sentence for charges encompassing theft, forgery, and identity theft. However, it was in the year 2000 that the criminal undertakings of Yoo Young-chul reached its zenith, spiraling into an entirely new level of depravity and horror. In the year 2000, Yoo Young-chul was sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison for the rape of a 15-year-old girl. In that same year, his marriage unraveled, culminating in a divorce initiated by his wife in October. The end of his marriage, coupled with his imprisonment for raping a minor, served as a profound catalyst, igniting a long-standing bitterness towards women. In his mind, Yoo Young-chul probably harbored a profound sense of injustice. The stark contrast between his daily struggles and the seemingly comfortable lives of the rich fueled his resentment. Why, he pondered, did the rich enjoy such comfort while he grappled with the hardships of everyday life? Furthermore, a discernible pattern unfolded in his interactions with women, prompting him to wonder why these engagements consistently led to severe mistreatment directed at him. These perplexing questions, unanswered and festering, contributed to a deep-seated bitterness within Yoo, one that would eventually become a driving force behind his killing spree. September of 2003 marked a significant chapter in Yoo's life as he was released from prison, reintegrating into society with an unsettling backdrop of lingering anger and resentment, directed particularly towards the rich and women. His anger manifested into a sinister practice of animal cruelty. perhaps in preparation for his later spree. On September 24, 2003, Lee Dok-soo, a 72-year-old university professor, and his 67-year-old wife Lee On-ok were found murdered at their apartment in Shinsadong, Gangnam, Seoul. Lee Dok-soo met a grim fate, his life cut short by a stabbing in the neck with a knife, while both he and his wife suffered a brutal bludgeoning with a 4-kilogram homemade hammer. Upon entering the crime scene, the initial appearance suggested a robbery homicide, given the ransacked state of the couple's closet. But interestingly, despite the apparent chaos, nothing of significant value had been stolen. As the police delved deeper into the investigation, the robbery theory began to unravel. In a surprising twist, a 3-drawer chest hidden in the clothes closet containing the victim's money was discovered untouched. This revelation prompted the police to wonder if the motive behind the crime might extend beyond mere robbery. As a result, the chief of Gangnam Police at the time posited that the perpetrator likely had a personal connection with the victims. With confidence in their ability to solve the case swiftly through textbook detective work, they anticipated apprehending the killer within a week by scrutinizing those in the victim's immediate circle. Contrary to these expectations, the elusive culprit remained at large for several months, and unbeknownst to the investigators, the man responsible for this heinous act was indeed Yoo Young-chul. According to reports, Yoo had been wandering through an upscale residential area in Gangnam, Seoul, actively seeking potential victims as outlets for him to vent his deep-seated resentment towards the affluent. Tragically, Lee Dok-soo and his wife became his initial targets, marking the beginning of a series of unfortunate victims who would fall prey to Yoo's killing spree. On October 9th, another gruesome tragedy unfolded in Gugidong, one of the wealthiest areas in Seoul at the time. The victims were Kang Eun-soon, an 85-year-old grandmother, Lee Suk-jin, a 60-year-old housewife, and Gu Jin-soo, her 35-year-old physically handicapped son. Records state that Yoo Young-chul forcibly entered their residence, wielding a hammer as his weapon. His brutal assault began with the elderly grandmother, whom he mercilessly attacked by repeatedly striking her head. The commotion caught the homeowner's wife's attention, prompting her to confront Yoo. However, this confrontation only resulted in Yoo violently kicking her in the stomach and interrogating her about the other occupants in the house. Affirming that her husband was not at home and that her son was seated upstairs, she tragically became the subsequent target of Yoo's merciless assaults, leading to fatal injuries. Then, ascending the stairs in search of the remaining family members, Yoo spotted the disabled son in a wheelchair. Carelessly, he yanked the young man out of the wheelchair and forced him to kneel. Subsequently, he ruthlessly attacked him with the same hammer. The aftermath of this brutal assault was recounted by forensic officer Kim Hee-suk, who said, "His head was struck so many times that his brain was scattered everywhere." In an attempt to hide the true nature of the crime, Yoo Young-chul once again proceeded to stage a robbery, making it appear as though the safe had been forcibly broken into. When the police eventually arrived, the only evidence they could find at the scene were 2 faint footprints. Upon returning home, Go Jung-won, the husband and father of the victims, discovered the horrifying reality of his family's fate. This marked the second out of 3 affluent families that Yoo targeted, unleashing his terror and subjecting them to unimaginable horrors. While law enforcement diligently sought the elusive killer, Yoo remained hidden in the shadows for the ensuing weeks. His whereabouts and activities during this period remained shrouded in mystery. However, a month later, Yoo Young-chul would resurface with chilling intentions. In a malevolent turn, Yoo targeted the final wealthy family, and this time, his actions escalated beyond mere killings. He not only took their lives, but also set their residence ablaze. Amid the engulfing flames, agonizing cries pierced the air. Cries that were emanating from an infant baby inside the inferno. The infant was the only survivor spared from the horror that unfolded within those walls. Fueled by the adrenaline of his gruesome deeds, Yoo turned his attention to more acts of violence, compelled by an insatiable urge to claim more lives. His subsequent target would propel him into a killing spree that claimed the lives of 13 more people. On October 16, 2003, the lifeless body of Yoo Jun-hee, the 60-year-old wife of a millionaire, was discovered in her residence at Samsung-dong, Seoul. During that period, Yoo Young-chul's identity remained shrouded in mystery, and it wasn't until he was apprehended and brought to justice that the grim specifics of the incident were unveiled. On that fateful day, Yoo Young-chul resumed his ominous patrols through the affluent neighborhoods of Seoul, seeking potential victims. Settling upon Yoo Jun-hee's residence, he brazenly broke in, brandishing a knife and instilling terror by asking about other occupants in the house. When Yoo Jun-hee replied that she was alone, he callously dragged her to the bathroom and bludgeoned her to death. A month later, on November 18th, Yoo Young-chul targeted yet another upscale residence. Upon reaching the gate, he met the vigilant housekeeper, 53-year-old Bae Ji-hae. She asked for him to identify himself and his purpose of visit, but in a chilling response, Yoo Young-chul brandished his knife and demanded directions to the master bedroom. Shortly after, he swiftly entered the master bedroom, where he came face to face with the homeowner, 87-year-old Kim Jong-suk, who was lying in bed. Without hesitation, Yoo launched a vicious attack, resulting in the tragic demise of Kim. Meanwhile, the housekeeper Bae held tightly to an infant under her care, attempting to shield the baby from harm. Despite her efforts, Yoo forcibly wrested the child from her grasp, placing the infant on the sofa and covering it with a blanket. Tragically, he then proceeded to fatally stab Bae to death. With 2 deaths in the house, Yoo hastily attempted to escape, but not before staging a robbery by forcing open a safe with a pickaxe. However, as he tried to pry the safe doors, an accidental cut occurred on his hand from a bent piece of metal. Fearing the trace of his DNA at the crime scene, he swiftly devised a cunning solution. A combination of newspapers and clothes were quickly placed around the housekeeper's lifeless body, which were then ignited by Yoo. Within mere minutes, the room became consumed by flames as Yoo Young-chul discreetly retreated from the crime scene. However, he lingered outside the home and waited for the house to be destroyed by the fire. Fortunately, the fire did not completely reduce the house to ashes, but nonetheless, it had succeeded in destroying the bodies and the first-floor bedroom. The infant baby, who was heard crying loudly in the burning house, was later saved by the homeowner's daughter-in-law. During the latter part of 2003, a respite emerged in Yoo Young-chul's disturbing killing spree. The eerie quiet marked a temporary cessation in the intrusion of affluent family homes, creating a deceptive sense of calm. During this period, it was recorded that Yoo had began a relationship with an escort girl, and the two had shared living arrangements for approximately 2 months. However, when she learned about Yoo's criminal history, educational background, and previous marriage, she immediately terminated the relationship and demanded for Yoo to remove himself from her life. Naturally, Yoo was left heartbroken and shattered by these circumstances. Many believe that this particular event, coupled with the divorce from his ex-wife, acted as the catalyst that influenced his subsequent acts of violence. After the breakup with his girlfriend, Yoo Young-chul not only harbored disdain for the wealthy, but also developed an immense hatred towards women. It's reported that Yoo Young-chul often viewed women as objects that he could either manipulate or dominate, Yoo would then channel these beliefs into his subsequent killings, and his victims were handpicked, all with a specific focus. On March 16, 2003, Yoo hired a 23-year-old sex worker named Kwon Jin-hee under the pretense of a business trip massage. Kwon was sent to the motel he was staying in, and when she arrived, Yoo Young-chul grabbed her by the neck and ruthlessly strangled her to death. Inside the bathroom, Yoo put on some music and began to cruelly dismember her body. Kwon's head was severed and placed on a trash can for the blood to drain. Her limbs and torso were then removed and packed into 10 different plastic bags. When he was done, he called for a taxi to ferry him to a trail situated behind a local university. It was there that he callously disposed of the remains beneath the shade of a tree. For the next 2 months, spanning from May to July 2003, Yoo Young-chul ruthlessly focused his attacks exclusively on escorts, with a disturbingly high number of victims. The chilling list of this crime spree includes at least 9 lives taken. Each victim that was hired by Yoo would meet a gruesome fate as he mercilessly bludgeoned them to death. Disturbingly, reports revealed that all the victims suffered the horrific aftermath of either decapitation or brutal dismemberment following their tragic death. The 9 recorded victims, spanning from 35 to 24 years old, shared a common characteristic: their stature. Yoo had realized that shorter individuals were more convenient to dismember and bury, a disturbing detail that connected all the tragic cases. Concerned about the increasing and unexplained disappearances of escorts, the leader of the escort agency took it upon himself to delve into the reasons behind the missing girls. Little did Yoo Young-chul know that despite his attempts to contact various escort agencies for his victims, almost all of these agencies could ultimately be traced back to a single individual, Mr. No. Upon further investigation, Mr. No discovered that a significant number of his girls had vanished after responding to calls from a number ending with 6523. A similar pattern emerged as he cross-checked with other escort agencies and massage parlors, revealing that their employees also disappeared after receiving calls from the same number. Alarm bells began to sound off in Mr. No's head. This could either be a big misunderstanding or the ominous onset of a grim revelation. It's July 16th, 2004, 10 hours after Yoo Young-chul feigned a seizure and ran out of the police station. Records state that during this time, Yoo sought refuge in a motel and procured at least 360 sleeping pills. Despite his attempts to evade capture, the police successfully located him approximately 12 hours later at a roundabout crosswalk in the city's red light district. Eerily, it appeared that just hours after escaping arrest, he was already on the prowl for a new victim. Upon his second arrest, Yoo chose to come clean, revealing the details of all his crimes to the police. He admitted to engaging in hour-long conversations with his victims, delving into their personal lives before cruelly bludgeoning them to death. While in custody, Yoo's story underwent multiple changes, yet he always agreed to lead the police to the locations of the bodies. Throughout this expedition, he was seen wearing a yellow raincoat and a mask to conceal his identity, earning him the infamous nickname, the Raincoat Killer. Upon searching Yoo's apartment, authorities reported finding a meticulously tidy and orderly space, along with an obsessively neat scrapbook. Disturbingly, Yoo had previously claimed to have consumed the internal organs of 4 victims, citing reasons of spiritual purification or epilepsy cure. Though there is no concrete evidence which supports this claim, the corpses of the 4 victims were reported to be devoid of their internal organs. On September 6, Yoo Young-chul made his first court appearance, facing charges for 21 counts of murder. Despite apologizing to the victims' families, he shockingly expressed no intention of halting his killing spree. On October 3rd, on the eve of his next court appearance, Yoo attempted suicide by hanging himself from the wall fan in his cell, but was thwarted by station guards. October 25th witnessed a shocking courtroom moment when Yoo, in front of some of the victims' families, heartlessly declared that the women he killed deserved to be captured by him. Eventually, in June of 2005, Yoo Young-chul was found guilty of 20 counts of murder and sentenced to death. In February 1998, the then South Korean President Kim Dae-jung implemented a moratorium on all executions in the country. This temporary suspension, still in effect as of 2024, signifies a pause or delay in executions, rendering them practically abolished in South Korea. Today, 2 decades after receiving his sentence, Yoo Young-chul remains confined to Seoul Detention Center on death row, alongside 59 other inmates awaiting their death. Many criminal experts suggest that if South Korea were to decide to resume the death penalty, Yoo Young-chul would likely be among the first to be executed. Heinous, an Asian true crime podcast, is brought to you by MediaCorp and OneUp Media. This episode was produced and written by Guangjin, edited by Alex, narrated by Jason, audio experience by Ethan Sam, additional engineering by Ashley from OneUp Media. Special thanks to executive producer Danny Cordy from MediaCorp. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one.